Okay, so today we're cracking open our This Month in History archives and we're zeroing right in on July to uncover a truly fascinating story. We're going to explore the intertwined history of two neighboring Florida towns, Mascotte and Groveland. These two communities didn't just happen to grow up next to each other, they essentially grew together. They shared infrastructure, local leadership, community spaces in ways that are honestly kind of hard to wrap our modern minds around.
So how did two neighboring towns unite? It's all about early postmasters, railroads, and one very special lodge.
And to really get the feel of this, we need to view this history through the eyes of the guy who meticulously preserved the whole thing, local historian and dedicated Mason, St. Tom Brown Jr. So for this explainer, I'm basically stepping right into Tom's shoes. Let's travel back and see exactly how a post office, a railroad, and a local lodge literally built a community from the ground up.
Our chronological journey kicks off in 1885 when R. Theodore Ruff became Mascotte's very first postmaster.
To really grasp what early Mascotte was like, you got to picture the raw, untamed isolation of the place. Before 1887, if you wanted your mail, you were waiting for a guy named Walter Woods to physically carry it over on horseback all the way from Oklahoma. But then, 1887 rolls around and our world completely turns upside down. The Orange Belt Railway Company finally finished their line, instantly connecting our rough little settlement to the outside world. It was a real game changer. The arrival of that railroad was the ultimate catalyst, fundamentally driving the town's growth, commerce, and daily communication like wildfire.
So, that railroad essentially built the foundation of our town. And right alongside it, the post office. Back in those pioneer days, a post office wasn't just some boring government building. It was the absolute anchor of the community. Usually, it was just run right out of the town's very first general store. You had Theodore Ruff. He arrived in 1885 and became our first postmaster in 1886. After him came Henry W. Cram in July 1897, J.H. Tootin in July 1914, and then finally Gabe T. Watkins in July 1916. Now, tuck Gabe's name in your back pocket because he's going to become a central figure in our story in just a minute.
Now, as the acting secretary of the local lodge for literally decades, I always felt it was my absolute duty to keep a pristine record of our South Lake County roots. The spark for everything we're diving into today, well, it began with a pivotal meeting on March 14, 1909. A group of Masonic brothers got together right here in the town of Mascotte just to see if there was enough local interest to get a Masonic lodge going. So let me be your guide as we look back at these foundational events that really shaped this whole area. Okay. How on earth did a local Masonic Lodge meeting literally stop a moving train? I know, it sounds totally like a tall tale, right? But the records confirm it. See, the neighboring town of Trilby was this massive railroad hub, and the Trilby Masonic Lodge, number 141, was just packed with railroad workers. So when our Mascotte brothers were trying to get our own lodge off the ground, those Trilby railroad men stepped up to help us out. In fact, older members used to tell me that whenever a train was passing through Mascotte on a lodge meeting night, the crews would actually stop the train right smack in the middle of town just so they could hop off and attend the meeting. No way, right? But it's true.
Empowered by that incredible hands-on support from the railroad guys, July 1909 turned into a monumental month for Mascotte. A group that included Dr. William G. Devane, pronounced Devon by the way, along with Isaac C. Edge, J.G. Hatcher, and a few others officially formed the Mascotte Lodge UD. And here's the kicker. Nearly half of these founding members had actually demitted or transferred from that nearby Trilby Lodge. The railroad literally and figuratively brought these men together to establish a brand new community institution.
Things moved incredibly fast during that pivotal July. On July 13th, 1909, we held a meeting to set our dues at a whopping, wait for it, $2.50. Just a couple of weeks later, on July 28th at 7:30 p.m., we held our very first official meeting with Dr. Devane acting as worshipful master. And by July 31st, we were already holding our first regular meeting. The brothers actually decided to hold these regular meetings on the Saturday night on or before the full moon, and then 2 weeks after that.
So where was all this happening? Well, the physical center of town, we'll call it the hub, was Gabe T. Watkins' store. It sat right on the south side of State Road 50, right between today's Knight Street and Howard Avenue, up near the railroad tracks. And this building just beautifully illustrates how deeply intertwined pioneer life really was. Downstairs, you had the general store and the official United States Post Office. Upstairs, on the second floor, you had the Masonic Lodge. The records even show the lodge paying rent to another fraternal organization, the Woodsmen of the World, just to use that space. Think about that. Government, commerce, and community fellowship, all literally stacked on top of one another under a single roof.
And the absolutely crucial point here is the sheer dedication of the people running these hubs. 32. That's the magic number. 32 years is how long Gabe T. Watkins served. In July 1916, he was officially commissioned as the postmaster of Mascotte, and he held that position operating out of that exact same building where the Masons met for 32 incredible years. He didn't retire until August 1, 1948. That means for over 3 decades, through 2 world wars and the Great Depression, if you lived in Mascotte, Gabe Watkins was the guy handing you your mail.
Our lodge didn't just stay put, though. Our moves actually reflect the shifting dynamics between Mascotte and neighboring Groveland. We obviously started in Gabe Watkins' store in Mascotte, but in 1918, we moved over to Groveland. Which is honestly fascinating, because Groveland wasn't even officially incorporated as a city until 1922. We reportedly met on the top floor of the old Union Church and school, right near the Greenwood Cemetery flagpole. And then, reflecting this whole geographic shift, in 1925 we officially changed our name to the Groveland Masonic Lodge, number 190, eventually moving into the top floor of the Newitt building.
All right, that brings us to July 11th, 1944. And guys, this is an absolute masterclass in small-town problem solving. So sometime after the original 1922 City Hall was destroyed, our Groveland Masonic Lodge had bought up the empty lots. But by 1944, the City Council foreclosed on the mortgage of the Newitt building, which, remember, is where we were meeting. So, we made a trade. The city traded the Newitt building for our lots over at State Road 50 and Lake Avenue. The city got the land they desperately needed to build their new City Hall, and the Lodge got the Newitt building back, completely clear of any mortgage. Both the city government and the local lodge basically secured their futures with one brilliant, clever real estate deal. So the lodge continued to operate mortgage-free in that Newitt building for decades. Finally, on August 25, 1981, we made our final move to a new building located at 320 East Jim Payne Road, which, incredibly, is exactly where the lodge still meets today. And, bringing this whole thing full circle, I was super proud to be sitting right there, acting as secretary during that 1981 move, making sure every single detail was meticulously recorded for the archives.
Okay, stepping out of Tom's shoes for just a second here. It's kind of amazing to realize that we can trace the horseback mail routes, the train-stopping lodge members, the 32-year postmaster, and those clever 1944 property trades solely because St. Tom Brown Jr. cared enough to write it all down and preserve it until he passed away in 2019. It really leaves us with a pretty provocative question. Who is keeping the history of your local community alive today? Because history isn't just about massive global events, right? It's about the people who built the towns we actually live in and the archivists who make absolutely sure they aren't forgotten. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and hey, I really encourage you to look into the history sitting right in your own backyard.